Den her video kommer til at være rimelig mærkelig at reagere til, og rimelig personlig at reagere til. Jeg synes, det kommer noget tæt på. Og det er simpelthen fordi, at i dag, der skal vi reagere til en ny video, der er kommet ud, som er på engelsk, som hedder The Mysteries Behind the Worst Massacre in Modern Austrian History. Og så er der nok nogle af jer, som sidder og tænker, men hvorfor er det personligt for mig? Og hvorfor kommer det tæt på mig? Og til jer, der ikke kender mig, så hedder jeg Mikkel. Jeg går under navnet Viking og er YouTuber, som bor i Østrig. Jeg bor i byen Graz, den anden største by her i Østrig, sammen med min kæreste, som er herfra. Og jeg har boet her nu siden 2021, gået ud fra cirka efteråret 2021. Og sidste år, 2025, om sommeren faktisk, det var i Juni, der var et skoleskyderi her i Graz, som, altså det alene er jo vanvittigt. Jeg vil selvfølgelig lade videoen snakke for sig selv, men ja, jeg glemmer aldrig den dag, fordi min kæreste skulle faktisk til eksamen den dag. Og jeg husker, at vi står i vores lejlighed, en time før hun skal til eksamen, og jeg kan huske, at jeg faktisk tænker, at altså, vi står og stresser lidt over, at hun skal jo til afsted. Hvorfor er du ikke kommet afsted endnu? Og hun var nervøs, og du ved, alt det der typisk eksamen noget, ikke? Indtil lige pludselig, der kan jeg bare se, altså, hendes ansigt ændrer sig bare på et splitsekund. Hun står med sin telefon, altså totalt, ligesom det her, ligesom hun er på vej ud af døren, og kigger sin telefon, og kender I det, når man kan bare se på folk, når der er et eller andet, ikke? Og hun kigger på mig, og siger til mig, at der har været et skoleskyderi på skolen. Og jeg kan huske, at jeg tænker, du tager jo pis på mig. Altså, hvad snakker du om? Hvad er det for noget at sige? Det joker man sgu da ikke med. Og det gjorde hun jo så heller ikke. Men jeg tror, at grunden til at tænke sådan, var, at man jo næsten håber, det er en joke. Det er jo ikke noget, vi hører om særlig ofte. Ikke engang bare i Danmark og Østrig, altså, men altså i Europa. Så det var meget surrealistisk. Og ja, bare fordi nu om dagen, så skal man jo bevise alting, man laver, så snart man går offentligt. Så her er et klip. Jeg har en engelsk kanal, som normalt laver YouTube på engelsk, men har besluttet at hoppe lidt over på dansk også. Bare for, jeg tror, det kan trøste min hjemve lidt nogle gange, og have en undskyldning for at snakke dansk, eller til at snakke dansk. Så her er et klip fra mig ved skolen dagen efter det her det skete. A lot of you guys that follow me and watch the reactions and what I'm doing know me for music and good vibes and reactions and stuff like that. However, today it's very different. As you can see behind me, we have flowers, people grieving, and I don't want to show that too much out of the respect for the people who's still grieving, but if there is any chance that you haven't heard what happened here yesterday in this high school in Graz, there was a school shooting where jeg synes, vi skal se videoen nu. Jeg vil selvfølgelig hoppe lidt ind, fortælle mine tanker, fortælle om, hvordan der var ledes. Og jeg kan sige, desværre så var det et skoleskyderi med dødsfald. Der var, hvis jeg husker rigtigt, 10, som afgik ved døden, ikke? Jeg tror faktisk, han var en af dem, ham som gjorde det, hvis jeg ikke husker forkert. Enten var det 11 med ham, eller 10 med ham. Og ja, en af de 10 var desværre også en veninde af min kæreste, som gik bort sidste år. Men nu bliver det meget privat, og jeg synes egentlig bare, at vi skal hoppe ind i det, og ja, se hvad de har at sige. Det her, det er en engelsk video, bare lige så I er klar på det, men jeg dækker den selvfølgelig på dansk. Altså giver mine tanker og den her slags sager på dansk. Så lad os gøre det. Jeg har valgt at tage undertekster på,
Europe
bare
isn't
for dem,
often
som har lidt nemmere ved at forstå, eller følge med, hvis de kan læse det. Og sorry, at jeg allerede stopper her, men det er bare sjovt at se, fordi det her, jeg bor, det er gratis, det her. Og jeg ved ikke, om I kan fornemme det, men der er sådan et lille bjerg, lille bjerg i midten af byen her, lige ved siden af floden her, hvor der er nogle hvide huse ovenpå, nogle hvide bygninger. Det hedder Schlossberg, og det er faktisk der, min kæreste, hun arbejder den dag i dag på en restaurant. Så ja, griner.
With the idea of mass violence carried out on schools, although it does happen more often than you might think. Today's story is a prime example of that, with a 21-year-old man returning to his own school and carrying out the deadliest rampage in modern Austrian history.
Ja, det må man nok sige. Ej, det er helt... Jeg ved ikke, jeg kan mærke det i kroppen sådan. Det er helt mærkeligt at sidde og reagere til på en eller anden måde. Hvilket er jo lidt sjovt, fordi altså, man skal da være den første til at sige, jeg gik jo ikke på skolen. Jeg kendte ikke dem, der var på skolen, så det er måske også lidt, jeg ved ikke, lavsigt at sidde og føle sådan her, fordi hvorfor sidder jeg og har det mærkeligt over det? Men jeg tror bare, jeg kan... Altså, igen, det er det der, min kæreste var, altså, hun var på vej ud af døren for at tage hen på skolen, ikke? Og det er sgu... Jeg ved det ikke.
Most mass shooters out there tend to leave behind some sort of journal, video diary, or manifesto in order to give you some insight as to what their motivation actually is in carrying out their attack. After all, the whole point is usually that they have some sort of message to spread in one way or another. It isn't often that they leave behind virtually nothing at all and leave everyone out there to kind of try to piece together the reasons as to why they even carried out the shooting in the first place.
Jamen, gjorde han det? Jeg synes de fandt et eller andet på hans computer, gjorde de ikke det? Det synes jeg husker. Men det kan godt være, altså det er også et år siden, det kan godt være, jeg husker forkert. Jeg synes bare, han efterlod et eller andet.
Arthur Eckleitner was born on June 23, 2003 in Hartberg, a city in Styria, Austria, to an Austrian mother and an Armenian father. The marriage between his parents didn't last, with them eventually splitting up and living in separate homes. Arthur ended up living with his mother for the majority of his life in and around the Graz Umgebung district in Styria. Regardless of the problems with his parents, Arthur was still seen to be a happy kid while he was young. He was known to be into PC gaming specifically. In 2015, when he was around 12 years old, he started a YouTube channel. The channel, simply titled Arthur Eckleitner 3860, would only come to host a couple of videos. In one video uploaded on February 8th, 2015, called Ich Bin's, or It's Me, he donned a mask from the Five Nights at Freddy's series and spoke of his other YouTube channel. He wanted to redirect people from the other channel to this one.
Hallo und herzlich willkommen. Und heute wollte ich euch einfach nur zeigen. Ich lade die Minecraft-Videos auf den Kanal um. Jetzt wisst ihr halt meinen Namen.
Jeg kan jo godt forstå, hvad der bliver sagt her. Jeg kan lige fjerne underteksterne, så I faktisk kan læse, hvad der bliver sagt her.
Und heute wollte ich euch einfach nur zeigen. Ich lade die Minecraft-Videos auf den Kanal um. Jetzt wisst ihr halt meinen Namen. Und damit ich euch beweisen kann, dass ich der Pirate Fox bin, habe ich einfach mal die Maske aufgezogen.
This other channel was one called Pirate Fox LP that he used during Minecraft collab videos with other YouTubers at the time. Throughout these collaborative videos, he would actually use his real name while streaming. Eventually, it came time for Arthur to attend secondary school. In 2017, he began attending the NMS Reiger School, but only stuck around for 1 year. He then began attending a school that's name translates to, simply, Vocational School for Economic Careers, but he only stayed there for 1 year as well. Det er lidt sjovt for mig at se alt der, fordi det her, det er også rigtig meget information, jeg ikke vidste noget om. Jeg ved heller ikke, altså, hvad det er vigtigt for, men i de her videoer er det jo storytelling, og det er jo selvfølgelig også interessant at se. Så meget af det her i starten, der bliver sagt lige nu, det med YouTube-kanaler og de her tidligere skoler, det ved jeg heller ikke noget om. After these two schools, he attended the Borg Dreienschützengasse, a high school in Graz that was geared towards preparing students to go on to a university.
Ja, og det er jo så her. Som det finder sted, ikke?
Arthur had trouble with his studies, even having to repeat the 6th grade. It isn't known exactly as to why his grades were so bad, but many have noted that Arthur was unlikely to participate in anything involving school. Some of his teachers have said that he was smart but very lazy. One of the only areas where Arthur would be really active would be the online gaming scene. In particular, he was into playing Valorant. A friend of his who later spoke to the media said that Arthur had become a very introverted person that lived a secluded life and lived out most of his days on the internet. His greatest passion had really become first-person shooter games in general.
Det lyder som om, det er mig, der bliver beskrevet lige nu. Jeg har ikke noget liv. Altså, jeg har seriøst ikke noget liv. Jeg sidder og har mine YouTube-kanaler og holder dem i live, og så investerer jeg lidt, og sådan nogle ting som det. Og så har jeg min kæreste, min fantastiske kæreste, og vores lejlighed her i Østrig. Det der med at gå ud hver weekend og være sammen og møde op og alt det der, så det gør jeg seriøst ikke særlig meget i. Det gør jeg godt nok ikke særlig meget i, så altså, jeg er også en eller anden loner på internettet.
As seen in screenshots of his Steam library, he had logged a lot of hours into various different Call of Duty and Counter-Strike games.
Kan I huske det Call of Duty her? Call of Duty World... var det ikke World at War? Eller var det World War 2? Jeg tror, det var World at War, ikke? Jeg elsker sådan nogle ting der, altså alt der involverer historie, er jeg så stor en fan af. Altså middelalderen og den første verdenskrig, og så var der bare et eller andet med 2. verdenskrig. Der var rigtig mange spil omkring 2. verdenskrig, da jeg begyndte at spille, da jeg var yngre. Jeg er 27 nu, så de spil, jeg spillede, da det kom ud, det har været de første par Medal of Honors. Vanvittigt fede 2. verdenskrig. Så var der de første par Call of Duties. Vanvittigt fede 2. verdenskrig. Så jeg har virkelig været en sucker for 2. verdenskrigsspil, og så lavede de jo det her World at War, tror jeg det hed.
He had logged a lot of hours into various different Call of Duty and Counter-Strike games. This scene was really the only place that he maintained much human contact. However, this friend noted that, while they did talk online, Arthur never seemed angry or resentful to anyone. Another friend of Arthur's, called only Sebastian in the media, said that they met online while playing Valorant. Over time, they became friends before meeting up in person. Eventually, they played together in a tournament for the game. He was likely speaking of Arthur's very short stint playing for a Valorant.
Okay, sygt nok alligevel. Der er rigtig meget her, jeg ikke vidste. Det er jo sådan en rigtig turnering, det her, er det ikke det? Sådan noget e-sport-agtigt noget.
Esports team, as he replaced another one of their teammates last minute when he couldn't attend the event. Sebastian said of Arthur, "We perceived him as very shy and reserved. He had difficulty expressing his feelings."
Okay.
They did go on to win the tournament, with Sebastian saying, "He was so happy when we won the competition in Graz and we all met up in person." Little did anyone know, Arthur wasn't quite so wholesome behind the scenes. In more private circles online, he had grown very interested in mass killings, especially school shootings. It doesn't appear he was very active online among the kinds of circles which might discuss these crimes in a glorified fashion. While he did have an account on Roblox, it showed very little activity in general. He had a Tumblr account as well, but he rarely ever used it. Much of Arthur's journey down this path is a complete mystery. Some of the first clues that Arthur was taking an interest in this sort of thing were evident in a few changes to his online accounts. Arthur, more than any other mass killer, became interested in Dylan Klebold, one of the shooters from the Columbine massacre. Dylan has, over the years, become somewhat of a blank slate character that other shooters or shooter sympathizers who suffer from depression project themselves onto. The other shooter, Eric Harris, is often described as being a psychopath and seen as less relatable to most. Dylan is often seen as the more relatable of the two, with him having so many fans that his own parents were disturbed by the amount of fan letters they received addressing.
Men altså, hvad fans, altså hvad fanden er der galt med folk? Hvordan... Ja, det kommer jeg aldrig nogensinde til at forstå, men altså, det kan man vel et eller andet sted sige er godt nok, men altså, hvordan fanden bliver du fan af en, der har begået et skoleskyderi? Det kommer jeg fandme aldrig nogensinde til at forstå. Og jeg kan sgu da godt forstå hans forældre. Prøv at forestille dig hans forældre, der er nødt til at gå igennem, hvad... Man vil sige, forældrene har jo ikke nødvendigvis. Forældrene har forhåbentlig ikke selv begået et skoleskyderi, og altså for at vide, at dit barn har gjort det her, og jo heller ikke længere er her mere. Og så får du fanmail. Kæft, der er seriøst nogle folk, der... Ja.
To him after his death. While Arthur never spoke exactly as to why he was so interested in Dylan Klebold, he made his interest obvious in many ways. Up until the year 2019, Arthur's YouTube channel had been dedicated to clips from different first-person shooter games and notably featured a much more bright and positive look. However, at some point he wiped the channel completely. Removing all of the content and the bio, all he left behind was a profile picture. A picture that he changed to a still image of Dylan Klebold from the Columbine security footage. Arthur's presence on Discord was similar as well. Very, very few of his Discord messages have ever surfaced. However, there is a screenshot of his profile where we can see that he had changed his profile picture to a photo of Dylan's corpse on the floor of the Columbine High School library after the massacre had ended. It isn't known exactly as to why Arthur developed such a fascination with mass shooters in the first place. While it has been said that he was bullied in school, these claims have never been confirmed, and in the grand scheme of things have been attested to very few times.
Som jeg husker det, fordi det her var der snak om, selvfølgelig, altså når sådan noget her sker, snakker hele verden jo om det. Det blev snakket om i Danmark i nyhederne. Det er jo ikke, som sagt, så er det jo ikke noget, der er normalt for os i Europa. Og jeg husker det som at han var blevet mobbet i skolen, hvilket jo er forfærdeligt i sig selv. Men at dem, som angiveligt skulle have mobbet ham, han gik ikke på skolen længere. Det var slet ikke de børn, de unge, som de anede ikke, hvem han var. Det var slet ikke noget med, altså nu mener jeg, selv hvis han skulle være blevet mobbet, så altså dem, der gik ud over, har aldrig nogensinde haft en chance for at kunne have noget med det at gøre. Og selvom, altså selvfølgelig er det forfærdeligt at blive mobbet, det er der ingen tvivl om. Altså der er aldrig nogensinde noget, der kan være din undskyldning for at tage hen på en skole med uskyldige unge mennesker og børn. Og ja, I ved, altså I kender resten, ikke? Det synes jeg fandme ikke.
Arthur did make his distaste for school obvious in another way, however. In 2022, he dropped out of his school in Graz, no longer interested in continuing his schooling there.
Det irriterer mig, at han siger Graz, fordi jeg vil bare gerne lige sige, at jeg har mange venner i Danmark, der også har problemer med det her. Fordi det er et sæt, på tysk der udtaler du det sådan lidt ligesom et TS, så det er Graz. Ikke græs.
At home, Arthur continued to spend a lot of time on Minecraft. He played on a large server under the username Zinni, a name that he would come to use for most of his accounts. Many have pointed out that nearly all of the skins he used for his character were femboys. Nothing about Arthur's sexuality or whether or not he actually considered himself to be a femboy is actually known. Given that femboys had reached peak meme status around this time, it may have meant nothing. Starting in 2023, Arthur began taking an apprenticeship as an office clerk for a while. The details as to what exactly this entailed haven't been made known, but he never did go on to make a career out of it. Arthur, now even more unsure of what to do in life, decided to take his interest in first-person shooters and weaponry and join the military. He attempted to enlist into the Austrian armed forces, but he wouldn't have much luck in that endeavor. As part of his enlistment, he was forced to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. Upon its completion, the military deemed him mentally unfit for service. The military hasn't, and most likely never will, release the records that show exactly how they came to this decision. However, they have said that he lacked resilience. Specifically, they said this was related to, quote, how he behaves in the face of danger, in the face of potential danger, and how he behaves in the company of others. With that failing, Arthur decided to attend a local vocational school. At this school, he was described as being a short boy with disheveled hair who always wore headphones. He was known to walk into class with a hunched-over posture.
Find en video af mig, hvor jeg bevæger mig rundt udenfor, hvor jeg ikke har... Ja, så jeg... hvor jeg ikke har mine headphones på. Og jeg skal virkelig have købt nogle nye. Jeg har altid dem her på, når jeg er ude at gå. Altid. Jeg kan ikke gå rundt udenfor uden musik, men det er selvfølgelig er sammen med nogen. Ellers så har jeg altid dem der på, og jeg skal virkelig have fundet nogle AirPods eller et eller andet. Altså det er ved at være tid. Jeg kan ikke gå rundt sådan her udenfor, det kan jeg simpelthen ikke blive ved med. Men ja.
Do whatever he needed to do and go straight home in the same fashion. He did talk to his classmates at the school from time to time. One of them described him by saying, Arthur was quiet and shy. The seat next to him was free on the first day of school, so I sat down next to him. At first, we didn't speak to each other for weeks, but after a while I got along well with him.
Okay.
However, the two of them weren't known to have any deep conversations in particular. He added, he often told me about his cat, whom he loved very much and spoke little.
Jeg kan huske det her billede. Det her billede var det første billede, der ligesom begyndte at cirkulere rundt af ham her i Østrig. Og folk er jo, altså, folk er jo så hurtige nu om dagen, ikke? Der er faktisk noget super, super sørgeligt ved den her. Ja, alt ved den her historie er jo sørgelig. Men der var en, der havde, jeg tror det var et meget, meget lignende navn til ham. Og med det samme blev han bare beskyldt for det ene og det andet, der fik dødstrusler, og jeg ved ikke hvad, og jeg skal komme efter dig, altså. Og det havde bare slet ikke noget med ham at gøre. Det er derfor, nogle gange, så skal folk fandme slappe lidt af, fordi altså, det er nogle hjernedøde beskyldninger at kaste efter uskyldige mennesker. Men det var der desværre en, der... folk manglede nogen, de kunne pege en finger på, og havde ikke tålmodighed til at vente på rent faktisk at få at vide, hvem det var, der havde gjort det, og begyndte ligesom at gøre deres egen efterforskning, og jeg ved ikke hvad. Og det resulterede i, at en uskyldige dreng her fra Østrig altså bare blev kastet under bussen på stedet, og det er bare også forfærdeligt.
He added, he often told me about his cat, whom he loved very much and spoke little. This friend noted that Arthur seemed to have few hobbies and spent most of his time playing alone. He said, of what he would do, playing PC or football outside, although he said he always played alone. I felt sorry for him. In December of 2024, for reasons unknown, Arthur deregistered himself.
Jeg får også mig selv til at lyde som en rigtig loner. Det har jeg sgu også. Jeg er ikke særlig social, men jeg har folk fra Danmark, jeg spiller med. Jeg har lige et par kammerater, som jeg godt kan spille med i ny og næ. Så spiller jeg med min kæreste også, når der lige er tid til det. Så det er ikke fordi det er helt galt. Men jeg er fandme ikke særlig social. Jeg skulle ikke... det er nemmere for mig bare at sidde her på mit værelse, snakke til et kamera til dig, 1000 kilometer væk fra Danmark, og så bare sidde og lave content for mig selv.
From various different esports websites.
Fuck,
he deleted most of his contacts online, no longer being able to talk to any of his friends that he had known for years, some of them for around a decade. He had effectively chosen to isolate himself from any and all of society. Arthur left the vocational school the next month in January. While he hadn't had much to say about his time at the school, he did say that he didn't feel comfortable there. With nowhere to go, nothing to do, and nobody to speak to, Arthur was left with nothing to do but spiral even further. Almost all of his time was spent at his home in a family housing estate in a suburb south of Graz. He lived with his mom on the ground floor of one of the buildings. It was a very average apartment, just big enough for the small family. By this point, they had been living there for about 5 years. Arthur's neighbors have spoken about how nice his mother was and how unremarkable he seemed to be. A woman who lived in the building had a son his age, but said that Arthur never bothered to speak to him. She said,
det giver jo god nok mening, hvis han var introvert og ikke lige var det mest sociale menneske i verden, så det jo går ud fra meget normalt.
He was completely withdrawn. He wore his large headphones and a backpack when he went in and out. He didn't greet anyone, but he was never unpleasant in any way. An older neighbor nearby has described Arthur's mom as a very nice lady who she would often make small talk with while they were both outside watering their flowers. She noted that she never heard a single raised voice coming from their apartment. All she remembered of Arthur was that he was short, thin, and had long, darker hair that often hid his face. There is some evidence that Arthur had tried to find a job around this time. He sent his resume out to at least one company in the area, hoping to be hired. In his resume photo, he looked notably much more clean-cut than he did at any other point, with his hair combed neatly to the sides and a smile on his face. But seeing no success, Arthur only began to spiral further. He decided that he would attempt to get a few weapons for himself. He wanted...
Ja, og det er jo det, man kan i Østrig, og også stadigvæk kan. Jeg har faktisk overvejet, og det er ikke af nogen skræmmende grund. Jeg har altid været fascineret af våben på en eller anden måde. Igen så snakker jeg om før, at jeg har altid elsket historier af de her ting, så når jeg siger fascineret af våben, er det ikke kun af skydevåben, og det er også af svær økser, de her vikingeøkser fra Skandinavien, og spyd og den her slags ting. Jeg har altid været meget fascineret af det, og gik selv til skydning med min morfar, da jeg var mindre i Danmark, i en lille landsby. Og jeg har faktisk overvejet hernede, at tage et... det er jo så ikke et jagttegn, det er en våbentilladelse, fordi jeg gerne vil prøve at tage jagttegn. Og det, hvad jeg skal betale, jeg tror det er 200 euro for at komme ind i træning, og så skal jeg træne lidt, og hvis jeg består den, så kan jeg lovligt købe en våben. Det er noget nemmere end i Danmark, vil jeg så sige, efter den her episode, var der snak om, at de vil stramme op på det. Og ud fra hvad jeg har forstået, men nu vil jeg heller ikke stå her og sprede falske nyheder. Jeg har ikke kigget så meget ind på det. Så vigtigt er det heller ikke for mig, det med våben. Det er bare sådan en lille bucket list ting, at jeg vil gerne have en våbentilladelse hernede og få jagttegn en eller anden dag. Udover det er det ikke så vigtigt, så ja, lad være med at quote mig på det her. Men ud fra hvad jeg har hørt, så det eneste forskellen er nu, det er, at nu skal du også lige have sådan en mental undersøgelse, før du altså må få det her våbentilladelse. Og det forstår jeg jo ikke, at det ikke som det mindste altid har været et krav. Så det er jo, ja. Men igen, altså tag hvad jeg siger lige angående den del med et gram salt, altså, fordi jeg er sgu ikke nogen ekspert på området, det er jeg sgu ikke.
Both a shotgun and a handgun. Given that he was now 21 years old and had no prior convictions, it was very possible that he could get his hands on them. One hurdle that he would have to pass would be another mental health evaluation. Knowing that
det var simpelthen en ting allerede. Så jeg synes bare, jeg har hørt meget snak om hernede, at den eneste forskel på det nu og dengang, altså før den her episode, det er, at man nu skal have en mental undersøgelse. Men det er netop grund til at sige, at tage det med et gram salt, fordi det tyder det jo så åbenbart på, at det skulle man allerede have. Det synes jeg bare, det er det folk, de siger. Men det ved jeg sgu ikke.
Had already previously failed an examination while attempting to join the military, this was the biggest risk for a roadblock in his plans. He had no choice but to go through with it and underwent the evaluation in March of 2025. Arthur was able to pass the evaluation this time around, with that likely being because the criteria for passing each test would have been significantly different. In April of 2025, he was able to get himself a firearms ownership card. While this wouldn't be a license to carry a weapon, it did allow him to purchase one. The first gun he went out and bought was a shotgun shortly after getting his card. He was able to get the gun relatively easily from a local gun dealer. To learn how to use it, he began attending a shooting club in Graz, engaging in a bit of target practice. In the middle of May,
det er jo sygt, at hvis jeg skal gøre det her, så er det jo højst sandsynligt, fordi jeg bor også i Graz, og det er jo højst sandsynligt det samme sted, vi skal tage den her test, tage den her, det her shooting practice, skydetræning, fanden hedder det på dansk? Men I ved, hvad jeg mener. Det er lidt vildt at tænke på.
Again went out to buy another, this time getting himself a Glock handgun. Arthur took to Tumblr to brag about his purchase.
Glock, som jo er et østrigsk produceret våben af, jeg tror han hed Martin Glockner, tror jeg. Det er Østrig, men jeg tror det var hans navn.
Using a photo of himself dressed up in a bit of gear as a profile picture, he didn't interact with other people much or even like many posts. One of his likes was on a piece of footage of Dylan Klebold smashing a bicycle with a hammer, something he had made for his video production class. The only other thing that he liked was a picture of the Dnipropetrovsk maniacs posing with their hammers. He only made 2 posts himself. One of them was a video of Dylan Klebold acting in his Hitmen for Hire video, showing the outtakes that he had shared. His only original post would be the most notable. He showed both of the guns he had purchased, along with the line, "Very early birthday present for myself." With that, Arthur began to plan his own massacre. Starting in late May, he made a playlist on Spotify consisting entirely of KMFDM music. KMFDM is a German industrial band that is known for its association with school shooters, thanks to it being one of the favorite bands of the Columbine shooters. Several of the songs on the playlist, like Son of a Gun and Adios, were even mentioned directly by the shooters. Arthur came up with his target location fairly quickly, that being the Borg Dreieschützengasse that he had previously dropped out of. Very little is known as to why he targeted this school specifically, but it may have been due to his hatred of one of the teachers in particular. He would target his old classroom specifically while making play.
Det er jo super. Det kan være, at jeg pauser lidt for hurtigt her, men det er jo super interessant, fordi det er slet ikke, hvad jeg har hørt. Nu er jeg heller ikke, altså efter det her, der lå vi virkelig, som sagt, så var min kæreste lige lidt for tæt på hele den her situation, end hvad der er behageligt. Ikke at det nogensinde er behageligt, men ja. Så vi prøvede virkelig at tage afstand fra det, efter det hele faldt lidt ned. Og det eneste, jeg synes, man hørte om i starten, men det var jo så også altså lige efter det var sket. Der kan have været fundet ud af mange flere ting senere hen. Det var jo det her med, at han skulle være blevet mobbet, dengang han gik på selv samme skole. Og det er jo det, der altid virkelig, virkelig altså forvirrede mig, fordi at som sagt, så var der ingen af ofrene, der gik på skolen, mens han gik på skolen. Så det, ja, Men som sagt, altså det kan jo være, man kan have fundet ud af meget mere siden det. Det er trods alt et helt år siden, og som jeg sagde, vi har prøvet at tage afstand fra situationen, så altså, eller episoden, hvad man kalder det. Så der kan være masser, jeg ikke ved.
Plans to continue the attack across the second and third floors of the school. Originally, he had wanted to bomb the school, but it doesn't seem that he ever figured out how to do that and abandoned the plan fairly quickly. He had attempted to make a pipe bomb, much like Dylan Klebold used in his own attack.
Det er rigtigt, det kan jeg faktisk godt huske. Men den virkede ikke, var det ikke sådan? Jeg synes, der var jeg kan godt huske, nu hvor han lige nævner det der, så kan jeg godt huske, der faktisk var snak om det. Og jeg kan også huske, at efter det der, så var der, altså, det var så sindssygt, hvor meget fokus der var på bomber og det ene og det andet. Og folk er også nogle kæmpe idioter, altså, fordi jeg kan huske, der var andre skoler, der begyndte at få opkald ugen efter det her, med trusler og om, at der er en bombe på skolen og sådan nogle ting her, som jo er, altså, nogle folk er fandme godt nok, altså, tabt bag en vogn. Det er så sindssygt, hvad nogle folk, de på en eller anden måde kan synes er sjov. Der er sgu forskel på, jeg har sgu også lavet telefonfis, da jeg var yngre. Der er fandme grænser, altså.
But never ended up completing it. While the bomb he made did have all of the necessary components to function, it was said that he never finished it to the point of being operational.
Okay, det kan godt være, det var sådan. Jeg troede faktisk, han havde lavet en, som så endte med ikke at virke.
Arthur carefully planned out his attack across the 2 floors of the school.
Altså, hvordan fanden skulle man også have fundet ud af det, så det giver vel egentlig god mening. Så for satan.
Making meticulous plans from the path he would take down to what time he would attack each area and how long each phase would last. One thing that he didn't note within his plans was the date that the attack would take place. That particular piece of the puzzle seemed to have still been up in the air to him. Arthur never did get the license to actually carry his guns. Legally, he was only allowed to possess them. He would only be able to transport them to other areas, such as the shooting range and a locked container. However, lacking the permission to carry his gun wouldn't even be a factor in his mind when he wasn't planning to live long enough to face justice either way.
Ja. Det er fandme... Hold kæft, det er sygt. Hold kæft, det er sygt. Altså, jeg om nogen kan forstå, at man kan have det svært i livet. Jeg har fandme heller ikke altid haft det nemt. Det tror jeg ikke, der er nogen af os, der har. Dig, som ser den her video lige nu, har helt sikkert også kæmpet med nogle ting på et eller andet tidspunkt i dit liv. Men jeg har sgu også haft nogle folk, der var efter mig i skolen. Jeg vil nok ikke kalde mig et decideret mobbeoffer. Det vil jeg ikke kalde mig. Men jeg synes simpelthen, altså jeg kender der folk, der er blevet mobbet. Jeg kan ikke forstå, hvor det går så galt. At det her, det... Altså at man kommer til et punkt, hvor det her, det er det, der føles som den sidste udvej. Jeg kan sgu ikke sætte mig ind i det.
When the 10th of June 2025 came around, Arthur decided that he was ready to carry out his plan. In preparation, he wrote a few goodbye notes to his family and filmed a video for his mother. In the video,
det var sgu da det her, der blev sagt i starten, var det ikke det, at der ikke blev gjort? At normalt så efterlader man sedler og notes og sådan nogle ting her, men at det ikke er normalt, at der ingenting bliver efterladt. Og det var det, jeg mente med, at det synes jeg synes sgu, at der var efterladt noget fra ham. Men det var der så åbenbart også.
So he explained to her that he was going out to attack his old school. He told her that he hadn't been forced into the attack by anyone else and that he was acting of his own free volition.
Kæft, det må være hårdt som mor. Ej, ja.
He said, "This is of my own free will," and asked her to take care of his cat. In the video, he
Ja, det kan jeg huske. Det der. Jeg kan godt huske, der var fokus på katten.
provided no explanation whatsoever as to why he was carrying out the attack, what he hoped to accomplish, or even what had motivated him. Arthur then threw his guns, a hunting knife, and hundreds of rounds of ammunition into his backpack and left the house. He walked to a nearby train station and made his way out to the stop nearest to the school. He then walked the rest of the way there. Along the way, he sent the video he had recorded for his mother to her. Unfortunately, she wouldn't see it for another 24 minutes. Arthur arrived at the school.
Ej, hvor må hun have gået igennem bogstaveligt talt helvede. Hold kæft at få sådan en besked. Altså nu jeg har ikke selv børn, så jeg kan ikke, altså men det må være, hold nu kæft.
School. Around that time, between 350 to 400 people, including teachers and students, were present in the building. At 9:43 a.m., he entered into the school through the building's main entrance with his backpack full of weaponry. He walked up to the third floor of the school and went into the men's bathroom. He sat down in a toilet in the stall and began to gear up. He took out his shotgun that he had sawed off and his pistol. He then put on a pair of shooting glasses and a headset, as well as a belt to hold his hunting knife. Arthur then hopped onto the trend of mass shooters taking a picture of their legs as they sit in a bathroom stall before their attack. Much like Samantha Rupnow, Solomon Henderson, and Dylan Butler, he uploaded this picture to social media. This shows that, at least in part, he may have been inspired by these killers in particular. He uploaded the picture to his X account, which notably also featured a profile of Dylan Klebold, with no caption at all. It was now just before 9:57 a.m. and he left the bathroom. Arthur made his way toward a classroom on the second floor and began his rampage. He started by firing upon several fifth-year students at the school in his old classroom.
Jeg kan huske, der var en video, der florerede. Der var et par videoer, der florerede. Alle har jo telefoner og al den her slags i dag. Hvor du kan høre... Du kan simpelthen høre, altså hvad der foregår. Du kan høre skuddene, og du kan høre folkene. Det var noget grusomt noget, men det var forfærdeligt helt generelt. Altså hele den her lortesituation bare skulle bare aldrig nogensinde have været.
After shooting at over a dozen students, he decided it was time for the next phase of his plan. He then made his way up to the third floor of the school. Here he made his way towards another classroom he wanted to target. A teacher nearby, a man named Paul Nietzsche, heard the previous gunshots, not knowing exactly what they were. He came out from where he was working to see Arthur standing at the doorway to one of the classrooms. The door was locked, but Arthur wasn't deterred from making his way inside. He pulled up his shotgun and began firing at the lock on the door over and over again. The teacher saw this, with Arthur not noticing his presence at all. He later told the media, notably mistaking his shotgun for a rifle. He was trying to shoot the door open with his rifle. He was busy, and I didn't look around much either. I didn't hang around. As Arthur continued to try and open the lock on the door, his mother finally opened the video he had sent to her before.
For sat, jeg kan slet ikke, altså hvad hun må... Satan, hvad hun må gå igennem i det øjeblik, altså.
After hearing what he had to say, she immediately called the police. By now, it was far too late and several people had already died, with many more having been injured. Arthur finally opened the door to the classroom after repeatedly firing at the lock. Once he made his way inside, he began firing at the seventh-year students indiscriminately, hitting many of them. By now, Arthur had fired both of his guns a total of at least 40 times altogether. The police got their first call from within the school at around 10:06. They dispatched
Den her video kan jeg også godt huske. Folk, der prøver at komme ud.
A total of 300 officers among several different units to the scene, along with 160 paramedics and firefighters. It was only about 1 minute before the sirens could be heard approaching the school. Even though Arthur still had plenty of ammunition at his disposal, he decided to end the attack then and there. It has been speculated that this was due to the police presence. At 10:07, he made his way back into the men's bathroom where he had begun his attack with his handgun. He sat back down in the stall and ended his attack in the same place that it had started. The police and the paramedics made their way into the school, quickly finding out that the attack had already finished. They found all of the dead and Arthur himself by 10:13 a.m. The school was evacuated in less than 20 minutes after their entry. A disaster alert was sent to nearby hospitals, notifying them of the dozens of injured people who would be heading their way. Students who were still at the school were sent to a nearby building to wait to be reunited with their families. All in all, the shooting had lasted about 7 minutes in total. During that time, roughly 40 shots had been fired. The number of the dead and the injured has varied greatly depending on the source. Anywhere from 11 to 30 students were said to have been injured. When it comes to how many died during the attack, the number is usually stated to be either 9 or 10, excluding Arthur himself. The actual...
Jeg er rimelig sikker på, at den her video kan jeg fandme også huske. Hvor er det forfærdeligt. Jeg er rimelig sikker på, at det var 10 med ham, hvis jeg husker rigtigt.
Number seems to be 9, according to the release of later obituaries and the lack of speculation.
Ja, altså 9 uden ham, og så 10 med ham.
As to who the 10th victim would have been. Those who died were Pauline Hofbauer, 14 years old, Lucia Hayden, Leah Bajrami, Hana Akmajic, and Annabella Bernhardt, all 15 years old, Leonie Kobrel, 16 years old, Leo Capillaro and Kaid Yasharevich, both 17 years old, and finally Dorit Marina Weiner, Arthur's old teacher. It was also stated by the media that Arthur knew one more of the victims, saying that one of the female students was actually his upstairs neighbor. Police quickly identified the shooter as being a 21-year-old former student, but they only released his first name and last initial. They kept everything about his identity a very closely guarded secret, lying to the media and saying that he didn't have any social media presence whatsoever. Many people from Graz were called to donate blood for the victims. Hundreds of people turned out to do so. It was during the initial media frenzy that Arthur's old friend, Sebastian, heard about what had happened on the news. He said, "When I heard about it, I texted him on WhatsApp and asked if he was hurt. There was no reply. The news came out that evening, and then the photo. That's when we found out. We haven't even processed it yet." The police soon made their way out to Arthur's home where they conducted a raid. They then took his mother in for questioning.
Stakkels kvinde, mand. Stakkels kvinde.
After the shooting, the Austrian government declared 3 days of national mourning. That morning, they held a nationwide moment of silence at 10 a.m. Chancellor Christian Stalker called the shooting an unfathomable tragedy and said, "It affects all of us as a society." The governor of Styria gave his condolences to the victims, the injured, and their families and thanked the emergency services. All public events were cancelled in the country. The day after, 11 people were still in the hospital. Some of them were critically injured, but they were said to have been in stable condition. The police's reluctance to share Arthur's identity with the public immediately led to problems. Given that they had only given the name Arthur A. and stated that he was of mixed Austrian and Armenian heritage, this led to anyone who fit that bill being harassed by the masses. One man in particular who shared that.
Det her er så ham, som jeg snakkede om tidligere, der endte med at virkelig blive kastet under bussen, selvom han absolut ingenting havde med det her at gøre. Og det er fandme heller ikke i orden.
And lived in the same area was hit very hard. An online witch hunt against him and his family began almost immediately after the shooting. This Arthur A. was older, a father, and most notably of all, alive. But they didn't stop the mob from coming after him. French broadcasters even used his photo on the internet and used it when talking about the
Det er eddermame sindssygt. Det vidste jeg så ikke, det der. Prøv at forestille dig, at der er medier, der bruger dit billede, og du har ikke noget med det at gøre. Hold kæft, jeg håber, han har sagsøgt dem. Altså en efter en. Fordi det er eddermame ikke... Det er eddermame ikke okay. Medierne har brugt dit navn og dit billede. Og så er det ikke, det er ikke engang dig. Hold kæft. Jeg håber, han har sagsøgt.
Shooter in the news, leading to many more death threats. Even his own friends turned against him, still not taking into account that the shooter was dead and that he was still very much alive to respond to them. Eventually, this man had to plead for help from an Austrian broadcasting company. He said, "My friends are being contacted, telling them how sick it is that it's me, even though they know me too. Even people who know me personally think it's me because so many pictures of me have been sent out. I've received death threats." His whole family was forced to sleep in a different place each night, getting no help at all from the police. The Austrian police, like in many similar cases, simply told him that the threats were only verbal and that they couldn't do anything until something had already happened. The man said,
tak for lort, altså.
"The police could only tell me that they could record the incident, but they couldn't offer me any protection because nothing had happened yet. They can only offer me protection once something has happened."
Det giver jo også super god mening. Vi kan desværre ikke, vi kan ikke beskytte dig endnu. Vi forstår, at du er bange for, at der kommer til at ske dig og din familie noget. Vi kan sgu ikke beskytte dig endnu. Men når det er sket, det vi skal beskytte dig fra, når det er sket, så ring til os. Så ringer du. Du ringer sgu med, så ringer du med det samme. Det gør du. Fordi så kan vi beskytte dig. Okay.
Still, even seeing the real harm that it was causing, the police remained very tight-lipped about the actual identity of the attacker. Even to this day, despite coming to have given up a lot of information about him, they still have never officially stated Arthur's last name. It finally came down to internet sleuths to get his full name and real picture more widespread, which gradually led to the hate mob dying down. With more about Arthur's identity known, the media began to try and piece together his motive. One magazine, Kronen Zeitung, published unverified claims that Arthur had been bullied without citing their sources. Despite this lack of citation,
det kan så være der alt det kommer fra.
Many other publications ran with the claim as well, saying that Arthur had been motivated by a desire for revenge. Some reporters did take a stand, saying that these claims had originated from social media rumors and hadn't been verified, but the information was more or less treated as fact. After all, it wouldn't be the first time that a school shooter had been.
Det er også, hvad jeg har hørt. Så hvis det ikke er sandt, så som jeg siger, altså husk nu, tag hvad jeg siger med et gram salt, ikke? Men det er også, hvad vi hørte her.
Bullied by any means, and it definitely offered some explanation as to why Arthur had even decided to carry out a shooting. After the claims of bullying surfaced, a few people did show up to corroborate them, although they weren't so conclusive with their claims. One man who knew Arthur in the past said that he had vaguely mentioned being bullied at one point, but he didn't mention any specifics. He said, "He talked about it, but he never mentioned the exact reason for the bullying. I think he decided to end his life and blamed other people for it." Another student he sat near in his vocational school said that he may have possibly referenced bullying one time. This student said that Arthur told him, about his old school, there were some bad people there. Aside from very few, very vague claims, there hasn't been any evidence that Arthur was actually bullied. If anything, it seems that he didn't interact with other students in any way, either positively or negatively, aside from the occasional small talk. Other people who knew Arthur have given their own theories as to why he did what he did. Many of them have come to blame his lack of future prospects. Some of Arthur's previous online friends did note that he felt stressed out from his vocational school and discouraged that he didn't seem to have a future. They felt that his recent complete lack of communication with his friends would have only made things worse. With many different mass shooters, a lack of hope in the future is often a core motivation. Many of them convince themselves that carrying out some sort of attack will give their life meaning in one way or another. Still, even if this theory makes sense, there is also no proof that this was Arthur's major motivating factor either. With the lack of a solid motive, many people began to come up with their own theories as to why the shooting had happened, and most just simply blamed it on the groups they disliked the most. Some blamed the attack on incel culture, saying that Arthur had only targeted women. This was flat out false, as Arthur did kill boys, and the fact that more girls died than boys.
Jeg skal lige til at sige, det var ikke kun kvinder, der mødte deres fate.
Seems to be nothing more than a coincidence. As stated, 2 of the boys did die, and even more were injured. Arthur was also never known to have participated in any incel group at all, and never expressed support for any of their ideology. Others came to blame the far right and claimed that the attack was a white supremacist attack on immigrants. This claim also held no weight at all. While one victim was dressed in a hijab and another had darker skin, most of the victims would have been immediately assumed to have been white. There is also no evidence that Arthur was involved in politics of really any sort. The police came to say that, after going through all of the final notes that Arthur left behind, they were still left with no answers. The Director General for Public Security, Franz Ruf, had confirmed this. He said that the notes were merely goodbye messages and gave no insight into what Arthur was actually thinking. In a note to his parents, he did apologize for the attack, but that was about it. Members of the government came to say that any motive behind the attack was pure speculation. After not too long, they came to the conclusion that Arthur had acted alone and hadn't involved anyone else in his plans. He hadn't even told anyone about them or so much as hinted towards them. The most they could argue was that he used photos of Dylan Klebold on social media and posted a picture of his guns on Tumblr. While that is alarming in hindsight, it's far from the first time someone on the internet has been edgy with that sort of thing. Even with
det svært bare ikke nok til at beskylde nogen for rent faktisk at være det, han endte ud med at være.
So little information about Arthur being released and no ideology or motive being established, the attack still went on to inspire others. As with many other mass shootings, other troubled youth don't necessarily need to know why the attack happened or what the killer believed. They just needed to know that committing this sort of attack was possible in the first place. On the 11th of June, a large number of bomb threats were sent to different schools and train stations.
Ja, og det var det her, jeg snakkede om, at det her, det inspirerede så mange andre til at begynde at lave det her telefonfis med, at der var bomber her, og der var flere skoler, der blev evakueret på grund af det her. Og så var du fandme også, der er en eller anden, der burde give dig en reality check. Der er fandme visse ting, man ikke spørger med, men det var et problem.
All throughout Austria via email. Some of these were even sent to other schools in the Graz area, one of which was a kindergarten. Police were dispatched all around the country to deal with the threats. At one point, the police even claimed to have stopped a copycat crime in progress. One day later, 3 schools in the area had to be evacuated due to credible threats. Over a period of days, 30 false alarms related to threats on schools in the Graz area would come to take place. Some of those who made the threats, such as a 19-year-old male, were caught and jailed. On the 23rd of June, the school finally reopened, although by this point there were only 2 more weeks left in the school year. The main areas where the attack took place were still closed off, with some of those classes being held in trailers outside of the school. Psychological counseling was offered for the students who decided to come back for those last couple of weeks. Copycat criminals weren't even the only bad actors who came to appear after the shooting. Another was a 33-year-old woman from Leibniz who claimed to have set up a donation fund for the victims on the day of the shooting. She had lied and claimed to have been an immediate family member of one of the dead children, despite being completely unrelated to anyone.
Kæft, så må du godt nok også have dårlig smag i munden. Og det værste er, det har de jo nok ikke, sådan nogle folk, men prøv at forestille jer det. At bruge folk, som lige har mistet deres børn, sorg, til at indsamle penge til dig selv, er fandme da godt nok noget af det laveste, man kan holde. Altså, så er du... Nogle folk er virkelig skadet.
In the case. She managed to raise about 37,000 euros, but it was found that she had actually just kept all the money for herself. She was arrested in September of 2025 for this, and it was found that she had also engaged in about 23,000 euros worth of welfare fraud as well. Her identity has not been made public. A couple of months later in November, the parents of 7 of the kids who died during the attack announced that they were planning to sue the Austrian government over what they called faults in the old law for obtaining firearms. The lawsuit was cancelled the next day when the government agreed to open a 20 million euro fund to provide them with compensation for their pain and suffering, as well as to cover therapy and physical treatment costs for those involved. In February of 2026, the Minister of the Interior, along with a victims' rights organization, urged the Austrian media to be more careful about exposing the identities of the victims in these crimes, saying that one family learned about their daughter's death before the police had even notified them. Many felt that this was more the fault of the police. Ironically, it draws parallels to Columbine, in which the families of the deceased weren't notified that their child had passed until almost 48 hours later. In that case as well, one family first knew that their son had died by seeing a photo of his body published by the media before the police had even bothered to talk to them. The Styria police recommended that the government take more oversight over the media, saying that their extensive reporting on Arthur's background had led to copycat crimes. They ignored that their adamant refusal to give details about the shooter led to others with similar names and backgrounds being harassed and threatened with death, and they ignored that the copycat crimes began taking place before any significant details about the shooter were known. That same month, the school was closed down for an extensive renovation. This was mainly done in order to rebuild the classrooms where the carnage had taken place. It has been said that they will be turned into a...
Ja, det er sgu heller ikke fedt at skal sidde og have undervisning i klasseværelse med en dør, der er blevet skudt op af en shotgun. Altså jeg synes slet ikke, nogen skulle have været tilbage på den skole, for at det ikke skal være. Jeg synes, man burde i samarbejde med en eller anden skole have fundet ud af et eller andet. Jeg synes ikke, der er nogen, der skulle have været tilbage på den skole, før alting var ændret. Altså det... Ja, det er sikkert også nemt for mig at sidde her og sige, men det er sgu min holdning.
That will feature multi-faith places of worship. To this day, we know very little about Arthur Akleitner, and it's fairly likely we never will. Arthur never left behind a manifesto. He didn't leave behind any significant video of himself. He rarely posted online, and when he did, it wasn't in relation to his plans for the attack. Even in his own final messages, he failed to provide any information beyond the fact that he worked alone. Regardless of how the police feel about giving more details about him, there simply just doesn't appear to be any content that existed to even be released. With Arthur producing no writings himself and leaving behind very little in the form of an online footprint, there is very likely nothing at all that could be released that would shine more light on what he was thinking. He will almost certainly forever remain a mystery. What we do know is that he committed the deadliest rampage in modern Austrian history.
Ja, det gjorde han sgu. Det gjorde han sgu. Ja. Vanvittigt. Vanvittigt. Det er... Ja, det er et år siden nu. Det skulle vildt, tiden den flyver. Det var noget rigtig skidt det her. Mine damer og herrer, tak fordi I så den her video. Pas nu på jer selv derude for satan, og så ja, vi ses i den næste. Tak fordi I så videoen.
Tusind tak fordi du svingede forbi kanalen og satte dig ned og chillede en lille smule sammen med mig. Hvis du stadigvæk er i humør til at hygge dig og kunne tænke dig at chille en lille smule længere med mig, så kan du se gaming content på den her side af mig, og du kan trykke på den her side, hvis du er mere til reaktionscontent. Hvad end du vælger, så glæder jeg mig til at se dig i den næste video. Ha' en god dag. Eller aften.